Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. The moon hung low over the ancient towers of Eldermoor, casting elongated shadows across the cobblestone streets. In the heart of the city, beneath layers of forgotten history, a solitary figure moved with purpose through a labyrinth of catacombs. Oliver, a young man with piercing green eyes and a cloak that seemed to absorb the light around him, clutched a weathered scroll to his chest. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the whispers of souls long departed. He reached a heavy iron door engraved with cryptic symbols. Taking a deep breath, Oliver pressed his palm against the cold metal. The runes glowed faintly, recognizing the touch of one who dared to seek their secrets. The door groaned open, revealing a chamber bathed in an eerie, ethereal light. Candles flickered along the walls, their flames dancing to an unseen rhythm. In the center of the room lay a stone altar adorned with skulls and dark crystals. Oliver approached it, unrolling the scroll and spreading it across the altar's surface. His eyes scanned the ancient text of forbidden ritual that promised power beyond imagination. Power he needed to protect his homeland from the marauding forces that threatened its very existence. "Are you sure about this?" a voice echoed in his mind. But he brushed it aside. Doubt was a luxury he could not afford. He began to chant, each syllable pulling at the fabric of reality. The candles flared, and shadows coalesced in the corners of the chamber. A chill swept through the air as the temperature plummeted. The ground beneath him trembled, and a fissure opened beside the altar, exuding a darkness that seemed to devour the light. From the abyss emerged Morthel, an ancient undead spirit draped in tattered robes, his eyes glowing like embers in a dying fire. His voice resonated like a chorus of the damned. "Who dares summon me from the depths?" "It is I, Oliver of Eldermoor," he replied, steadying his voice. "I seek a pact to gain the power needed to vanquish my enemies." Morthel's gaze pierced into Oliver's soul. "Do you understand the price of such power?" Oliver hesitated for a moment. "I am prepared to pay any cost." A sinister smile crept across Morthel's face. "Very well." The pact is sealed. A surge of dark energy flooded into Oliver, knocking him to his knees. Visions of conquest and devastation flashed before his eyes. He felt invincible, yet somewhere deep within, a seed of unease took root. As the ritual concluded, Morthel's form dissipated, leaving behind a lingering echo. "Remember, every power has its price." Emerging from the catacombs, Oliver was greeted by the first light of dawn. The city was waking, oblivious to the monumental shift that had just occurred. He flexed his fingers, feeling the raw energy coursing through his veins. The whispers began softly, barely audibly, a faint murmur at the edge of consciousness. Over the following days, Oliver tested his newfound abilities. With a mere thought, he could raise the fallen, commanding them as extensions of his will. Battles that once seemed hopeless now turned in their favor. The invaders were pushed back, their forces decimated by legions of the undead. Eldermoor hailed him as a hero, the savior who had turned the tide. Yet, with each victory, the whispers grew louder. They spoke of glory, of domination, of casting aside the old ways to embrace a new order under his rule. Nelia, his closest friend and a skilled mage in her own right, noticed the change in him. "Oliver, there's something different about you," she remarked one evening as they stood atop the city walls, watching the sun set beyond the horizon. He shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "War changes us all." "It's not just that," she pressed. "Your aura. It's darker, and I've heard rumors, so whispers of necromancy." He laughed dismissively. "People fear what they don't understand." "Maybe so, but I'm worried about you." "Promise me you'll be careful." He placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I appreciate your concern, but I know what I'm doing." That night, the nightmares began. He found himself wandering through fields of ash and bone, with Morthel beside him, urging him to unleash his full potential. "Why limit yourself?" the spirit taunted. "Together, we can reshape this world." Oliver awoke in a cold sweat, the echoes of Morthel's laughter ringing in his ears. He tried to shake off the unease, attributing it to the stresses of war. During the next battle, the enemy forces regrouped, launching a surprise attack on a nearby village. Oliver arrived to find flames consuming homes and the cries of the wounded filling the air. Rage boiled within him. Without hesitation, he summoned a horde of undead warriors, directing them to obliterate the invaders. But as the enemy fell, so did innocents caught in the fray. The undead did not discriminate, they followed his command with ruthless efficiency. Oliver watched in horror as the village was reduced to ruins, the lines between ally and foe blurred in the chaos. Nelia confronted him amidst the devastation. "What have you done?" she cried, tears streaming down her face. I was trying to stop them," he stammered, his voice hollow. "At what cost? Look around you." He gazed upon the destruction, the weight of his actions crashing down upon him. The whispers surged, louder than ever. "They were weak," Morthal hissed. "Their sacrifice was necessary. Get out of my head," Oliver shouted, clutching his temples. Nelia grasped his arm. "Oliver, talk to me." "What's happening?" He pulled away. Fear and confusion etched across his face. "I need time to think." He retreated to his quarters, poring over ancient texts in search of answers. The more he delved, the more he realized the depth of his predicament. The pact was not just a mere agreement, it was a binding contract that entwined his soul with Morthal's. Each use of his power strengthened the undead spirit's hold on him. Desperation drove him to seek counsel from the oldest tomes, those that spoke of artifacts and relics capable of severing even the most insidious bonds. One name surfaced repeatedly: the Stone of Severance, rumored to reside in the treacherous Black Forest Mountains. Determined to free himself, Oliver prepared for the journey. As he gathered supplies, Nelia confronted him once more. "You're leaving, aren't you?" "I have to," he replied, not meeting her eyes. "I've made a terrible mistake, and I need to fix it." "Then let me come with you." "It's too dangerous." "And staying here isn't?" "You're my friend, Oliver. Whatever you're facing, we can face it together." He sighed, knowing he couldn't dissuade her. "Fine. But you must promise to follow my lead." "Agreed." They set out under the cover of night, venturing beyond the familiar confines of Eldermoor. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but Oliver felt a glimmer of hope. If he could find the Stone of Severance, perhaps he could reclaim his life. The journey was arduous. They traversed dense forests where the trees seemed to whisper secrets and warnings. Creatures of the night watched from the shadows, their eyes glowing with malevolent intent. The further they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. One evening, as they made camp by a murmuring brook, Nelia broached the subject she had been avoiding. "You need to tell me everything." He poked at the fire, sparks spiraling into the darkening sky. "I made a pact with an undead spirit named Morthal. I thought I could control it, use it for good. But it's consuming me." She listened intently as he recounted the events of the ritual, the battles, the growing influence of Morthal. When he finished, she sat in thoughtful silence. "There may be a way to help you," she finally said. "I've heard of rituals that can strengthen one's will against possession." "It's too risky," he replied. "Besides, the Stone of Severance is my best chance." "Then we'll find it. But you must let me help you along the way." He nodded appreciatively. "Thank you, Nelia. I don't deserve your kindness. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how we set them right." As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, the challenges intensified. A dense fog enveloped them, distorting the landscape and playing tricks on their minds. They encountered a pack of wraiths, spectral beings drawn to the dark magic emanating from Oliver. The battle was fierce, and each use of his necromancy chipped away at his resolve. One night, Oliver awoke to find himself standing at the edge of a cliff, arms outstretched as if embracing the void. Nelia's frantic shouts pulled him back. "You were sleepwalking," she gasped, her face pale. "I don't remember," he murmured, dread settling in his stomach. "We need to find that stone soon," she insisted. Days turned into weeks as they pressed on. The terrain grew more unforgiving, rocky paths giving way to icy slopes. Supplies dwindled, and exhaustion weighed heavily upon them. One afternoon, they stumbled upon a village nestled in a secluded valley. The inhabitants eyed them warily, their faces etched with suspicion. An elder approached, his gaze lingering on Oliver. "You carry a darkness with you," he stated bluntly. "We mean no harm," Nelia interjected. "We're travelers seeking passage through the mountains." The elder considered them for a moment. "Be warned, the mountains do not take kindly to outsiders, especially those tainted by shadow." That night, as they rested in modest accommodations provided by the villagers, Oliver felt the weight of countless eyes upon him. The whispers had grown into an incessant drone, eroding his sanity. Morthal's voice cut through the noise. "These people fear you. Show them your power. Command their obedience." "No," Oliver whispered fiercely. "I won't succumb to you. You're already mine," the spirit sneered. Suddenly, screams echoed from outside. Rushing to the window, Oliver saw flames licking at the wooden structures. Figures moved in the darkness, raiders attacking the village. Without thinking, he summoned skeletal warriors to defend the inhabitants. The undead clashed with the raiders, a chaotic dance of death and desperation. Nelia joined the fray, her spells illuminating the night. The village was saved, but at a cost. The sight of undead soldiers struck terror into the hearts of those they had protected. The villagers recoiled, their gratitude overshadowed by fear. "Monster!" one shouted, "You've brought this evil upon us." Confusion and hurt flickered across Oliver's face. "We helped you." "You've damned us all," another cried. The elder stepped forward, sorrow in his eyes. "You must leave. Your presence brings only darkness." Nelia placed a hand on Oliver's arm. "We should go." As they left the village behind, Oliver's shoulders sagged under the weight of guilt. "Maybe they're right," he said quietly. "Maybe I am a monster." "Don't say that," Nelia urged. "You've made mistakes, but you're trying to make amends." He shook his head. "Everywhere I go, I bring suffering." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "Listen to me. Morthal wants you to believe that. He feeds on your despair. But I know the real you are the one who cares deeply, who fights for what's right." He met her gaze, a flicker of hope rekindling. "I don't know how much longer I can resist him." "Then we'll fight him together." They continued onward, the peaks of the Black Forest Mountains looming ever closer. The air grew thin, each breath a labor. Snow began to fall, gentle flakes that belied the harshness of the environment. As they ascended a narrow pass, a blizzard swept in without warning. Visibility dropped to mere feet, the wind howling like a living beast. They sought shelter in a cave, huddling together for warmth. Hours passed, the storm showing no signs of abating. Oliver's thoughts turned inward, battling the encroaching darkness. Morthal seized the opportunity, his voice dripping with malice. "You're weak, Oliver." "Why fight the inevitable?" "Because it's my life," he retorted silently. "You have no claim over it." "Foolish boy. You invited me in. Now, I will take what is mine." A searing pain shot through his head, and he cried out. Nelia gripped his hand. "Stay with me." "I can't." "Hold on," he gasped. She began chanting, weaving a protective spell around him. Golden light enveloped them, pushing back against the shadows. Morthal's screams echoed in Oliver's mind, fading as the spell took effect. The pain subsided, and he slumped against the cave wall. "Thank you," he whispered. "Rest now," she said softly. "I'll keep watch." The storm finally passed, leaving behind a pristine landscape glittering under the sunlight. They resumed their journey, each step bringing them closer to their Goala and the unknown challenges that awaited. At last, they stood before the entrance to a cavern marked by ancient symbols. "This must be it," Nelia said, her breath visible in the frigid air. Oliver nodded, determination stealing his features. "The stone of severance lies within." As they ventured inside, torches ignited along the walls, illuminating intricate carvings depicting battles between mortals and spirits. The path led them to a vast chamber where a bridge spanned a deep chasm. On the other side stood a grand doorway guarded by a towering figure. "Who seeks the stone of severance?" The guardian's voice boomed, reverberating through the cavern. "Oliver of Eldermore," he declared, stepping forward. "I seek to break the pact that binds me to Morthel." The guardian studied him with eyes that glowed like molten silver. "Many have come before you, seeking release from their own folly. What makes you worthy?" "I am willing to face whatever trials are necessary," Oliver replied earnestly. "I wish to atone for my mistakes and prevent further harm." The guardian's gaze shifted to Nelia. "And you? Why do you accompany this bearer of darkness?" "Because I believe in him," she answered without hesitation. "He has the strength to overcome this, and I will help him see it through." The guardian considered their words. "Very well. The trials ahead will test your resolve, your integrity, and your very soul. Proceed if you dare." They crossed the bridge, the air thick with anticipation. As they passed through the grand doorway, the chamber behind them vanished, replaced by a labyrinth of mirrors. Reflections stretched infinitely in all directions. Oliver looked around, his own image staring back at him countless times. "What is this place?" "A test of self," Nelia mused. "Be wary of illusions." From the mirrors, distorted versions of Oliver emerged, each representing his fears and doubts. They taunted him with his failures, his selfish desires, the pain he had caused others. "You're unworthy," one sneered. "A puppet of darkness," another spat. He clenched his fists, fighting the urge to lash out. Nelia's voice cut through the cacophony. "Remember who you are." Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath. "I am Oliver. I have made mistakes, but I choose to make them right." The echoes faded, the illusions dissipating like smoke. The path cleared, leading them to the next chamber. There, they faced a series of challenges, a riddle that required wisdom over knowledge, a test of compassion where they had to sacrifice personal gain to aid spectral figures in need, and a trial of endurance against a tempest that sought to strip away their very essence. Each success strengthened Oliver's resolve, weakening Morthel's grip. Yet, the spirit was not defeated. In a final act of defiance, Morthel manifested within the chamber, towering over them. "You cannot win," he roared. "I will consume you." Nelia stepped forward, her eyes blazing with determination. He is not alone. Together, they prepared to face the ultimate challenge, a confrontation not just of might, but of will and spirit. Oliver tightened his grip on his staff, feeling the weight of Morthel's malevolent gaze bearing down upon him. The chamber grew colder, shadows stretching and twisting as the undead spirit summoned his dark energies. Nelia stood beside Oliver, her hands glowing with a protective aura that shimmered like a shield around them both. "Morthel, this ends now," Oliver declared, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. The spirit laughed, a hollow sound that reverberated off the stone walls. "You are but a fragment of my power, mortal." "Do you truly believe you can sever our bond?" "I believe in him," Nelia interjected firmly. "And together, we will defeat you." Morthel's eyes flickered with disdain. "Then witness the futility of your defiance." With a sweeping motion, he unleashed a torrent of shadowy tendrils that surged toward them like serpents poised to strike. Oliver raised his staff, channeling a beam of pure light that clashed with the darkness. The impact sent shock waves through the chamber, cracks spiderwebbing across the floor. "Hold on!" Nelia shouted, reinforcing the barrier with her own magic. The combined force of their spells held the tendrils at bay, but Morthel pressed harder, his power seemingly limitless. "We can't keep this up," Oliver gritted his teeth. "We need to weaken him." An idea sparked in Nelia's mind. "The Stone of Severance, use it now." "It's not ready," he replied. "It requires a direct connection to sever the bond." She glanced at Morthel, then back at Oliver. "Then we'll create one." Before he could protest, Nelia stepped forward, lowering the shield just enough to let a tendril slip through. It lashed toward her, but she was prepared, capturing it with a binding spell that traced back to Morthel. "What are you doing?" Oliver exclaimed. "Trust me," she called out, her focus intense. Realizing her plan, Oliver grasped the Stone of Severance, its surface pulsating with energy. He aimed it along the conduit Nelia had established. "By this stone, I break the chains that bind us. Morthal sensed the threat, his expression twisting into rage. You dare use my own power against me? A beam of light shot from the stone, traveling along the tendril straight to Morthal. The spirit recoiled as the severing energy struck him, his form flickering like a fading specter. Now, Oliver, Nelia urged. He concentrated all his will into the stone, feeling the bond between him and Morthal stretch to its breaking point. Memories of the darkness he'd embraced flashed before he met the battles, the whispers, the innocent lives affected by his actions. But interwoven were memories of hope, Nelia's unwavering support, the determination to set things right, the realization of what true strength meant. Your hold over me ends here, Oliver shouted. With a final surge, the stone emitted a blinding light that engulfed the chamber. Morthal let out a piercing scream as the bond shattered, fragments of dark energy dissipating into nothingness. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a serene stillness. Breathing heavily, Oliver lowered his staff. Is it over? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Nelia approached him, a relieved smile on her face. You did it. The bond is broken. He looked at the stone, now dull and lifeless. I couldn't have done it without you. She placed a hand on his shoulder. We did it together. Exhaustion washed over him, but so did a profound sense of peace. For the first time since the pact, his mind was quiet. No whispers, no shadows lurking at the edge of his consciousness. Let's get out of here, Nelia suggested gently. We could both use some rest. They retraced their steps through the labyrinth, the trials that once challenged them now inactive. Emerging from the cavern, they were greeted by the soft glow of dawn breaking over the mountains. The crisp air was invigorating, carrying the scent of pine and the promise of a new beginning. As they made their way down the rugged path, Oliver glanced back at the entrance. It's strange, he mused. That place tested every part of me, yet I feel lighter having gone through it. Trials have a way of revealing who we truly are, Nelia agreed. And you've proven yourself. They continued in companionable silence, the only sounds being the crunch of their footsteps and the distant call of mountain birds. After descending to the foothills, they set up a modest camp near a clear stream. Nelia tended to a small fire while Oliver gathered his thoughts. What's on your mind? She asked, noticing his contemplative expression. He gazed into the flickering flames. I was just thinking about what comes next. I've spent so long fighting first the invaders, then Morthal, and even myself. Now that it's over, I'm not sure what to do. She smiled softly. You have a chance to start anew, to decide your own path without the shadows of the past looming over you. He nodded. I want to make amends for the harm I've caused, to help rebuild and perhaps prevent others from making the same mistakes. That's a noble goal, she affirmed, and I believe you'll succeed. He looked at her appreciatively. I couldn't have asked for a better friend. Her cheeks flushed slightly. Well, someone has to keep you out of trouble. They both laughed, the tension of their recent ordeal melting away. The following morning, they resumed their journey toward Eldermoor. As they approached the city's outskirts, signs of recovery were evident. Fields that had been ravaged were now tilled and sown, and the sounds of construction echoed from the rebuilt walls. At the gate, guards recognized them and waved them through. Whispers followed their passage, some of awe, others of uncertainty. Word had spread of Oliver's departure and the mysterious circumstances surrounding it. They made their way to the council hall, where the city's leaders convened. The atmosphere inside was solemn but not unwelcoming. Oliver, the head counselor, greeted him cautiously. You've returned. He bowed respectfully. I have, and I come bearing news. Speak, the counselor invited. Oliver recounted the tale of his journey, the pact with Morthal, the trials, and ultimately the severing of the bond. He spoke openly of his mistakes and his desire to atone. When he finished, silence hung in the air. Finally, the counselor spoke. Your honesty is appreciated. The darkness that once tainted you appears to be gone. It is, Oliver confirmed. I wish to help repair the damage I've caused and prevent such dangers from threatening our city again. Another council member leaned forward. And how do you propose to do that? By sharing my knowledge. Establishing a place where magic is taught responsibly, emphasizing the consequences of its misuse. The council exchanged glances. An academy? Someone suggested. Yes, Oliver agreed. A school open to those who wish to learn, guided by principles of integrity and service. After a moment of deliberation, the head counselor nodded. Very well, we will support this endeavor under the condition that strict oversight is maintained. Thank you, Oliver replied sincerely. Over the next months, Oliver and Nelia dedicated themselves to establishing the academy. They recruited like-minded scholars and mages, developing a curriculum that balanced practical skills with ethical considerations. The school quickly became a beacon of hope and progress, attracting students from neighboring regions. One day, as Oliver was instructing a class on elemental manipulation, a messenger arrived with a letter bearing the seal of a distant kingdom. He read it with growing interest, then shared it with Nelia later that evening. They've heard of our academy and wish to send their students to study here, he explained. That's wonderful news, she replied enthusiastically. Our influence is spreading. He smiled thoughtfully. It's more than I ever imagined possible. She placed a hand on his arm. You've earned it. He met her gaze, gratitude shining in his eyes. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Well, I do have a talent for organization, she teased. He chuckled. That you do. As the academy flourished, so did their relationship. The bond between them deepened, built on mutual respect and shared experiences. One evening, while strolling through the academy's gardens, Oliver paused beside a blossoming tree. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, he began. Nelia raised an eyebrow playfully. Oh? He took a steadying breath. We've been through so much together. You've stood by me at my worst and helped me become better. I can't imagine my life without you. Her expression softened. Nor can I. He produced a small, intricately crafted pendant, a symbol of unity they had designed for the academy. Would you do me the honor of partnering with me, not just in our work, but in life? Emotion flickered across her face. Are you proposing? He nodded, a hopeful smile tugging at his lips. Yes, I am. She looked at the pendant, then back at him. Nothing would make me happier. Relief and joy washed over him. He placed the pendant around her neck, and she leaned in, their foreheads touching. Here's to a future we build together, she whispered. Together, he echoed. Their partnership brought new energy to the academy. Students admired not only their expertise but the genuine care they showed for each other and everyone around them. Under their guidance, the academy became renowned for producing not just skilled mages but compassionate leaders. Years rolled by, and the scars of the past faded into distant memories. One afternoon, as Oliver watched a group of graduates receive their ceremonial robes, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Look at them, Nelia remarked, joining him. They're ready to make their mark on the world. He nodded. I hope they carry with them the lessons we've imparted. She smiled knowingly. They will. You've set a fine example. He turned to her. We have. Just then, a familiar face approached, a former student named Lysander, now a respected mage in his own right. Master Oliver, Mistress Nelia, he greeted warmly. I wanted to thank you both. Your teachings have guided me well. We're proud of all you've accomplished, Oliver replied. Lysander hesitated, then continued. I've been offered a position on the council. I hope to bring the values of our academy to the governance of Eldermoor. That's excellent news, Nelia exclaimed. You'll be a great asset. As Lysander departed, Oliver mused aloud. It's gratifying to see the next generation take up the mantle. Nelia linked her arm with his. You've created a legacy that will endure. He shook his head modestly. We have. They strolled through the courtyard, the late afternoon sun casting a golden glow over the stone archways and lush greenery. Do you ever think about how different things might have been? he asked thoughtfully. She considered the question. If you hadn't made the pact, he nodded. Every experience, good or bad, has led us here, she reflected. I wouldn't change a thing. He smiled appreciatively. Neither would I. As they reached the edge of the gardens, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it the sound of laughter from the students. Life has a way of surprising us, Oliver remarked. Indeed it does, Nelia agreed. And I, for one, am grateful for the surprises. He glanced at the horizon, where the sky melded into shades of pink and orange. Here's to whatever the future holds. She rested her head on his shoulder. Together, we can face anything. Time continued its steady march, and Oliver and Nelia grew older, their hair touched with strands of silver. Yet their spirits remained youthful, invigorated by the ongoing journey of learning and teaching. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace in their cozy home adjacent to the academy, Oliver pulled out a worn journal. Do you remember this? He asked, handing it to Nelia. She opened it carefully, recognizing the faded pages filled with notes and sketches from their early adventures. Our travel log, she smiled nostalgically. It's been ages since I looked at this. He leaned back, sipping a cup of tea. I found it while organizing the library. Brought back a flood of memories. She turned the pages slowly. We were so young and reckless. He laughed. Speak for yourself. I was the picture of caution. She raised an eyebrow skeptically. Oh, really? Who was it that decided to climb a mountain without proper gear because time was of the essence? He held up his hands defensively. Fair point. They shared a comfortable laugh, the warmth of the fire reflecting the warmth in their hearts. I'm glad we wrote it all down, she said softly. It's important to remember where we started. He nodded. Agreed. It reminds us of how much we've grown. She closed the journal, her gaze thoughtful. Perhaps it's time we penned a new chapter. What did you have in mind? Traveling again, she suggested. Visiting the places our students come from, learning new cultures, perhaps even sharing our knowledge beyond Eldermoor. He considered the idea an intriguing proposition. And the academy? It's in capable hands, she assured him. Lysander and the others are more than ready to lead. A sense of excitement stirred within him. Then let's do it. One last grand adventure. She smiled brightly. To new horizons. And so, with the same spirit that had driven them in their youth, Oliver and Nelia set off to explore the wider world. Their journey took them across vast deserts, through dense jungles, and over rolling seas. Everywhere they went, they absorbed the richness of different cultures and shared the wisdom they had gathered over a lifetime. Their travels became the stuff of legends, inspiring countless others to seek knowledge and embrace the interconnectedness of all people. Eventually, they returned to Eldermoor, content with the life they had led and the impact they had made. Surrounded by friends and the legacy of their work, they spent their days in peaceful reflection. One quiet afternoon, sitting beneath the shade of a grand oak tree on the academy grounds, Oliver took Nelia's hand. Do you feel we've accomplished what we set out to do? He asked. She gazed at the bustling scene around the students studying, laughing, forging their own paths. I do. And more. He squeezed her hand gently. I couldn't have asked for a better partner. Nor could I, she replied, her eyes shining with affection. As the sun cast long shadows and the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, they knew that while their own stories were drawing to a close, the chapters they had helped others begin would continue onward. Their lives had been a tapestry of challenges and triumphs, darkness and light, but ultimately, it was a story of redemption, love, and the enduring power of the human spirit.